Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spettin, joined by Bob Phelan, and we are coming to you on a Friday because it is a very, very exciting day in Birdland. Earlier today, Andy Koska at the Baltimore Banner reported that the Orioles and catcher Samuel Basallo are in the process of finalizing an 8-year contract extension worth $67 million. In addition, the deal will include a club option for the 2034 season and escalators that increase the overall value to $88.5 million. Now, throughout the Mike Elias years, there has been a constant call from fans and media for the Orioles to lock up some of their young players. And up until today, we had not seen an extension of this type. But the 20-year-old Basallo, clearly the franchise believes that he is a special talent. He is one of the top prospects, technically still in the game. And it's been clear that since his debut a few days ago, there has been a new energy around this team. And good news here for Orioles fans and for this franchise is that we've got a lot of years of Samuel Basallo ahead of us. So, Bob, unfortunately, Nick could not join us today, but you and I are on to react to this news. Just go back to this morning. When you saw it, were you as pleasantly surprised as I was?
Yes, absolutely. What an exciting day, first of all. Glad we're here. I had the Basayo era is here on my YouTube thumbnail even before today, so it's only fitting that it remains there. Actually, I had woken up late for the first time in a long time this morning. I had to call out of work because I have some issues going on with my back. I woke up groggy, look at my phone. I see the @everyone tag on our Discord, which is usually means something big has happened. We don't just use that liberally. And I'm like, what could it be? Trade deadline's over. Like, what could this possibly be? As soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, here we go. And it was just been a good day ever since. But yeah, very exciting. I think we kind of called this a couple of years ago that Basallo was most likely to be the first extension just because he's an international player. They tend to be more open to this type of thing early in their careers because they just want to get some influx of money. And hey, look, for Basallo, he can still hit free agency at 29 or 30 years old after this deal, gets his money, and the Orioles lock up who we think is one of the Orioles' best prospects in the history of the organization. Big day. This is great for the international side of things in the future as well, to have him established now in Baltimore for the next at least 8 years, 8.5.
Yeah, and as we talked about on our show earlier this week, Basallo has the possibility to be a franchise-altering player on many levels, not just because of his talent, but because he really is the first, or should be the first, homegrown star to come out of this international program that Kobe Perez and his team have taken from a non-existent laughing stock within the game to something that I think has become very remarkable, if not elite, because there are more prospects on the way. Now, not all of them, or probably none of them, are going to be up to the level of Basallo, but there's still a lot of good players in the years to come. But looking at Basallo and what the Orioles are getting in him, you're getting a player who has undeniable power from the left side of the plate, a good hit tool, and while, yes, there is plenty of development still to be had behind the plate, the Orioles are in a position where they can afford to give him some leeway. And there's something to point out here, too, is that now that Rookie of the Year eligibility thing that we talked about earlier this week can kind of be thrown out the window because Basallo, by signing the extension, would not net the Orioles a draft pick next year. If he signs, oh, go ahead, Bob.
That's actually not the case.
Oh,
Just looking at things, I think big brain front office here has exploited a loophole where, because he made his major league debut before signing the extension, he is still eligible for the PPI incentives, which, yeah, I was much like you. I thought that was washed out, but I mean, I haven't seen this like confirmed, but just reading between the lines of a few different outlets, yeah, only pre-debut extensions that disqualify you. So even better.
absolutely. So still a chance here the Orioles could possibly net an extra draft pick next year. But one of the things I think is, going back to the point I was making, is that the Orioles are in a position where they can continue to let Basallo develop defensively at the major league level. Adley Rutschman is still here. You've got some opportunities now where you can work Basallo's bat into the lineup without having him behind the plate. So while, yes, depending on what report you read nationally, You might have doubts still about Basallo's ability to stay behind the plate. I don't necessarily agree with those, and I think that he could be a very solid, at least average defensive catcher one day, and with that kind of bat, give you premium value. But at the same time, let's suppose the worst case scenario, which is that Basallo doesn't develop into an adequate major league catcher. This is still a good value for a first baseman DH who can hit and can hit for this kind of power.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even if he never catches another day in his life, this is still a great contract extension, which obviously he's going to. And I agree that he can at least get to average, maybe a little bit above average. And he's very raw, but he's also just turned 21. Plenty of room to grow in that area. But he plays a great first base. We've seen that in AAA. I haven't seen it at the majors yet, but promise he's pretty good over there and only going to get better. And yeah, the bat alone, I feel like, is going to be worth the money that is signed for. Yeah, it's like it's almost not quite the Ronald Acuna deal, but kind of similar, where it's, you're getting a pretty good deal, but also he's young enough and he can still hit, like I said earlier, free agency at a decent time. I was hoping for the 12, 14-year deal to really lock him in, but I guess I can accept 8 with a ninth as an option. But yeah, I think, Adley's still going to be here for at least the next year or two. He's a free agent after the 2027 season. Just drafted Caden Bodine on the way up. It's plenty of options, and I guess that's the benefit of the Orioles being so good at acquiring depth at the catcher position throughout the organization, that Basallo can continue to just catch 50, 60 games a year, unless he's forced into a more prominent role there, and just let the bat really do all the talking.
Yeah, and this is something that we're going to touch on a little bit more, but what do you think made the Orioles decide that this was the player and this was the time to do it? Because as I mentioned at the top of the show, this has been a pretty constant criticism from fans and from the media, and I think it's one that's valid, that the Orioles haven't really been proactive about locking up some of their best young players. Now, I said there has to be some nuance applied to that, given that several of their better players are represented by Scott Boras. Basallo is a CAA client, so that's another factor that makes this a little bit different. But what do you think was behind the front office's thinking here?
I think they see what we see, and probably even more so, that Basallo is just a legitimately special talent. Said it in the past that I think he's the best prospect of this front office's crop, despite having Jackson Holliday, Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson all be number one overall prospects in the game. I think Basallo is a better prospect than all of them, and it's not a slight whatsoever on them. That's how special I think Basallo, especially the bat, is and will be. But I do think they tried with those other guys too. I'm sure they've been talking to Adley, Gunnar, Jackson, Westberg even, but they're either represented by Scott Boras, which is, you're pushing a mountain or a boulder up a mountain. Yeah, you have your work cut out for you there. And Adley, I'm sure, was betting on himself, as he probably should have. And now maybe he regrets not signing a deal earlier, but he's also still got 2 years, and he's most likely going to get paid anyway. I still don't think an Adley extension is completely out of the realm of possibility, shorter than we originally would have expected if it happened, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's here longer than just the 2 years remaining of arbitration. And then you have guys like Cowser, Mayo, who I'm sure they're talking to their agents as well, but they're also guys that maybe you can wait until they get closer to their arbitration years before you really jump on that extension. So I just think Basallo is a special talent. He was open to it, and that formula worked out to what we saw today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go back to your comment about Basallo as a prospect compared to Gunnar, Holiday, and Rutzman at this stage in their career. I agree with you on Basallo's hit tool. I think only Gunnar, I would say, was better at that area of the game, and he even had some flaws that became apparent, which I'm sure there's going to be some flaws apparent with Basallo in the coming weeks and months. But I would put Basallo's hit tool ahead of where Rutzman and Holiday were at the beginning of their major league careers. And power, he's head and shoulders above both of those players, because we're talking about someone who's been one of the more prolific power hitters in the minor leagues over the last few years. And that was continuing this season despite some challenges early on, including an injury that led to an IL stint, as well as an injury before that that was preventing him from catching at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not only does Basallo have that raw power that obviously he's had since the day he signed, and how beautiful is it that we are one Garrett Cole signing away from Basallo being a Yankee, and Orioles were able to flip him away from them and sign him in that year. Kobe Perez, 5 years ago, MVP. Kobe Perez is like just as important as anybody else in this front office, maybe more so in some ways. But yeah, he not only does he have that raw power, but he gets to it in games already at 21 years old. You saw it off the wall in Boston. You saw it getting robbed. I mean, it was short wall, little hot by Jesus Sanchez to rob that one home run from him. But he's going to be a 30 to 50 home run per year guy. I think anywhere within that range is, as long as he's healthy, realistic. So yeah, it's just, I still don't think, and I know Orioles fans have loved what they've seen from him in the short time already, but I don't think they're still ready for what he's going to provide to the offense of this team.
Well, and look, Basallo could hit a home run out anywhere, but this ballpark is perfect for him.
No, you're right. It really is. I would not be shocked if he's the first player to hit the warehouse on the fly during a game. Also, since they brought in that left field a little bit, he is so good at just Chris Davis style, just like protecting, quote unquote, the plate and just flicking the ball out over the left field fence. So, not to give anybody flashbacks of Chris Davis, but he is capable of that. And yeah, he's going to improve behind the plate. And I honestly think he's going to be great for just the clubhouse in general as well. He's got a great personality. You saw following the Trevor Rogers game where he called his first game, they kept showing him in the dugout, just walking around, talking to everybody in the clubhouse. He's got a great personality, kind of Anthony Santander-esque. Yeah, I think you get him in there, get him comfortable. And I'm assuming that this contract also just takes a little bit of pressure off of him to feel like I have to perform. Money's in the bag now. So just get comfortable, play your game. And yeah, there's not enough good things I can say about this contract being signed today.
Well, and I think from what we've seen with Basallo and everything we hear about his character, this is not a player who's going to rest on his laurels and say, okay, I got paid. Now it's, I can do whatever. There's still, I think, a burning desire there to continue to get better game in and game out, not just year in and year out. And we've heard it from people in the organization. It's been reported by other outlets as well that no one is harder on Samuel Basallo than Samuel Basallo. So I think that this is, you're right, a player that not just talent-wise, but character-wise, you can build around.
Absolutely. He's got the growth mindset that we've seen Gunnar carry into the majors from the minor leagues. Yeah, I don't think him getting this contract signed is going to help him or stop him from wanting to be the best of the best. He's a very driven person, but it at least should take that huge worry. I'm sure he's still wants to win the Rookie of the Year next year. He still wants to be an MVP caliber player year in and year out, and wants to win a World Series with the Orioles. And I think we're all on the same page there.
I think a lot will probably be made in the coming days of, is Samuel Basallo a franchise player? Because this does feel like a franchise player contract. And I do think that you're looking at a future where the lineup is built around him. But one of the positives that the Orioles have for at least the next 3 years beyond this year is that they can have Gunnar Henderson in there. As we talked about earlier, Adley Rutzman is still under team control for another 2 years beyond this year. So that's, if he can get back to what he was prior to the second half of last year, that's still a really good player. And yeah, maybe Jackson Holliday's results so far have been a little bit underwhelming, but you can tell that there's several more gears there for him to get better. So while Basallo is probably now, the long-term building block, for the next few years, the Orioles have the makings of an elite lineup.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they can stay healthy, 2025 year is cursed, between health and just underperformance at the wrong times, and we've been through it all. But yeah, I mean, 1 through 9, the Orioles are capable of putting together one of the best lineups in baseball, and I think the oldest player would be Adley Rutschman at like 27 years old. So as long as Ryan Mountcastle's not in it, he's an elderly 28. So yeah, just the window is open to at least 2034, but the window of having all the current young guys that have come up as the core of this team, it's 2 years with Adley, 3 years with Gunnar, 4 or 5 years with Holiday, and it goes up from there. But that's what the pipeline's all about. You extend the guys like Basallo that you can to long-term deals, but it's just you got to keep churning the players in and out, and hopefully you trade the ones you can't sign, and you sign a couple more extensions along the way. Maybe Kobe Mayo in 2 years. Maybe if Colton Cowser bounces back, learns how to hit a change up a little more consistently, you sign him to an extension, or if he proves he can play center field. And we still have plenty of prospects between Enrique Bradfield and all the draft picks from this year, Nate George, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, set up for the long-term window. It's just even more possible with this deal.
Absolutely. And you make a good point, about health, because that really has been the undoing of the 2025 Orioles, has been health. And as Andy Koska wrote about earlier this week in an article where he interviewed Jordan Westberg, it does feel like there's perhaps a little bit of a veteran leadership void in the clubhouse right now. So I do think that the Orioles probably have to go out this offseason and supplement this young core they have with some veteran bats. And that's before you even touch the pitching staff, which I know is going to be the main area they need to improve upon. But the great thing about this contract is you've still got the financial flexibility to do that. And that's not just wishful thinking on the part of having new ownership or recent ownership in David Rubenstein. This is just, in a baseball sense, a very reasonable deal. I don't think it skews too far towards being team friendly, but at the same time, you've still got the financial flexibility to make some moves.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, especially because there's no one else locked up. There's no bad contracts on this team right now, which in this day and age of baseball is saying something. Yeah, that also means there's no other great longer term deals, but hey, now we know it's possible. Maybe this opens up some other players' eyes and say, oh, I kind of want to get in on this. And it's obviously not going to be the Boris guys, but maybe this makes some players more willing to sign that type of extension. And yeah, you can go out and sign a free agent pitcher, trade for someone with a little extra salary. It opens things up for sure.
Yeah, I see a question here from a live viewer that I want to go to, which is why does the Basallo extension turn into a Basallo versus Adley situation? I will say that I definitely don't see it that way. I've never seen these two players as mutually exclusive. And I think you and I have both kind of agreed on that today. But it has been weird to me to see that narrative out there today of like somehow the Adley Rutschman era is now over. Am I the only one who thinks that way?
No, I mean, yeah, we've been talking how these two are perfect for each other for years because Basallo is that bat first guy who can play first base DH when he's not catching. And obviously he also allows you to rest Adley a little bit more often from behind the plate, which could help him out in the long run. Like I said, I still think there's a world where Adley signs a 5 or 6 year extension as soon as this offseason, and these guys can coexist for the next 5 or 6 years and be better for each other in the long run. I think Mark is right in the chat that Caden Bodine is the guy to watch if you want to speculate about Adley Rutschman's future, because he's kind of a similar player where he's really good behind the plate, can hit for average, not a ton of power, great plate approach. Like, they're fairly similar guys. Obviously, Adley was more renowned coming out of college, but yeah, I think that's where you want to watch. If 2026, Caden Bodine all of a sudden is racing through the organization, ends the year in AAA, then you might want to see what's happening going into that offseason between 26 and 27, but that's far away.
Now, to peel back for a moment and look at this contract in some broader context, not just for the Orioles, but for baseball. Per Jake Rill over at Orioles.com, Basallo's contract is the fourth largest in franchise history, behind the 7-year, $161 million deal for Chris Davis, Adam Jones' 6 years, $85.5 million extension, and then the free agency deal with Miguel Tejada that was 6 years and $72 million. I see a lot of parallels here with the Jones contract. Jones was a little bit further into his career when he signed the deal, but at the same time, that was kind of the sign from the then Dan Duquette led front office that this is the guy that we're going to be building around. This is somebody that we see as an integral part of this clubhouse. So I kind of find some parallels between Basallo and Jones in that case. And then in baseball, I wanted to point this out, and I pulled this for an article that I'm working on now that will be on our Substack, oriolesontheverge.substack.com, later on this weekend. Extensions for catchers this early in their career are pretty much unprecedented. The closest parallel in baseball history up to this point has been an extension that Salvador Perez signed with the Royals back in 2012 that was $7 million over 5 years. Obviously, a massive team-friendly bargain there for the Royals. That was signed after Perez had 50 days of service time in the major leagues. Basallo's current service time at this point, a much smaller number with just a few days. In fact, less than a week under his belt in his major league career. So it's kind of interesting to see that, where you don't see catchers extended a lot early in their career, and I think that there's reasons for that, but it also points to how unique Basallo is in terms of his talent and his age.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he is catcher. There's no doubt about it. Like right now, I think they said with Adley out, he will be the primary catcher, maybe closer to 50-50 than an Adley and Alex Jackson combo would have been. But he also, like we talked about, can just simply be the backup catcher because the bat is strong enough to play first base DH every day. So yeah, he is a unique talent from that side of things. But yeah, I don't know. Catchers, I get it because that's a very injury-ridden position. It's a lot of wear and tear. You don't really want to lock in too long before they can prove the ability to stay healthy enough to stay on the field. I mean, we're seeing it with Adley the last couple of years. Even if he's playing, he's banged up a little bit out of the necessity that he had to be out there as often as he did early in his Orioles career. So, like we talked about, hopefully Basallo and Adley can help each other out to stay fresh and healthy moving forward once 2026 comes around.
Yeah, and to go back to the Orioles for a moment, and the point I made a moment ago about Adam Jones, the 6-year extension he signed, I believe, was back in 2012, $85.5 million. That's still a larger contract than what Basallo has signed, at least in terms of the guaranteed value of the deal. But I see some pretty strong parallels between Basallo's deal and Jones's deal. Jones was a little bit further out into his career, but kind of the signal of this is the personality and this is the player that we want to build around that the Orioles sent when they signed Jones to that extension feels very comparable to this deal with Basallo.
Yeah, I think once Basallo gets comfortable, like I say, he's got a great personality, and I think between the growth mindset and just the outgoing personality, I do think he could be a guy that could be a leader in the clubhouse and a guy you want to build around, not just because of the on-field abilities, but the off-field abilities. And again, get that international presence back in that clubhouse. It's just a good thing all the way around.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to this point, which is the international signing work that Kobe Perez and his team have done since joining this organization, because the Orioles in the Dominican Republic and other parts of Latin America were essentially non-existent for decades. And that really, if you want to look at some factors that set the Orioles back, particularly in the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, that inability to be in that part of the world signing players is at or near the top of the list of things that held them back. Now, though, we're seeing not just a player emerge from that pipeline of talent, but have him locked up long term. And I know the three of us are excited every year in January when we get to do the show that headlines the international class. And I know, especially for our core listeners, that's a fun episode. But it's a hard sell for more casual fans because we're talking about 16, 17-year-olds that you might not see in the big leagues for another 6 years, if at all. But I think that one takeaway I would want Orioles fans to have from this, among many others, is that this facet of the game does matter. and it's worth paying attention to, even if you don't get the immediate payoff.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what the Orioles were missing out on for so long before Mike Elias was hired and brought in Kobe Perez is the potential. Yeah, it might not hit more than once every 2 or 3 years, but to get a guy, and it will probably maybe never be quite to the caliber of Samuel Basallo, but Kobe Perez was on the radio and he was hyping up Aaron Estrada as a guy they're very excited about the steps he's taken. He's now in Double A, hitting fantastically at 20 years old. I think he's criminally underrated. He could be the next guy that just comes up and makes his presence known in the next year or two. And you got Steven Martinez, who's 17, and Del Marva. He's batting 120, but they keep running him out there because that's how much they believe in him. And also, as Nick wrote about, great timing today on our Substack, the Orioles have two of the top, I want to say 22 picks or highest signing bonuses apparently coming up in the next January class, including number 11, which will easily, I'm imagining, break the Orioles record for giving a player the signing bonus that was previously held or currently held by Luis Almeida. So yeah, this is just going to continue to be a market that the Orioles need to try to circle around. And I can't imagine having Basallo in the majors, locked up in an Orioles uniform, his dad in the stands with two phones, one to each ear. I can't imagine that's going to hurt the desire for these kids to come play for Baltimore and see if they can be the next Samuel Basallo.
That's a great point. And with that, now we will head into our final segment. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing. Located at 1421 Ridgely Street, Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards. And if you're looking for a place to go out today or this weekend to celebrate this contract extension, Checker Spot is the perfect place to do that. You can get a good beer. You're right near Camden Yards, making it the perfect pre or post game destination. And while you're at the ballpark, be sure to head to the beer stand behind home plate, where you can get one of Checker Spot's signature beers, the Bird is the Word. And our last call question of the night is this. Now that the Samuel Basallo deal is in place, should fans expect more extensions in the future from Mike Elias and the Orioles front office? Or is this simply a case of Basallo being the right player at the right time for an extension? Bob, what are your thoughts?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I do think a lot of it is just Basallo is that exception and someone that it just worked for all parties, I think, to come to this deal. But I do think that there will be more extensions. And I think Trevor Rogers is a good case to be one. I think it suits up. He's going into a walk year next year. Very easily, he could say, no, thanks. I want to go into the free agency at 27, 28 years old and try to get what I can. But also there's a case to be made that he's had a lot of injuries in his career. He's had a lot of up and down, could he lose a touch? Is it in the back of his head that he could, go back to struggling the way he did in the past or get hurt? So I think there's a case that you could sign him for a 3 or 4 year deal, maybe 20 to 25 million per season, try to lock someone up there. And I do think guys like Kobe Mayo, Colton Cowser, maybe not this offseason, but pretty soon as they get closer to their arbitration numbers, why not, lock in the guaranteed amount of money and buy out a couple free agent years if you think it'll work out and if they're willing to agree. Yeah, I certainly think this is not like the first of a flurry of extensions, but the first of some more to come in the future for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I don't expect a wave of extensions over the next 6 to 12 months, but at the same time, I think that you can see now that this is within the front office's level of comfort and wheelhouse to get these kind of deals done. And while I don't expect a 10-year extension for Gunnar Henderson to pop up tomorrow, as much as I would love that, there are still some players that are definitely good extension candidates. I think Trevor Rogers is a great one. I could even see Kyle Braddis, although he's a few years away from free agency still. That's one that in a year or two down the line, the Orioles might want to look at, especially because Braddis, from his vantage point, he's already had Tommy John surgery. He's not going to be a free agent until after the 2028 season when he'll be over the age of 30. So that could be one that you look at maybe adding a year or two onto. Cowser and Mayo, absolutely, I think as they approach arbitration would be guys you consider. So, and that's not even including players that are in the minor leagues now that could be in this team's near-term plans that might sign extensions similar to this. So it's not the tip of the iceberg where you're going to see a ton of extensions in the near future, but I do think you will see more.
Yeah, Bradish is a good shout. I could see if he proves to be pretty much back to himself in 2026. After next season, I could see like a 4 or 5 year extension, like you said, buying an extra year or two out of his free agency. And what was I going to say? Dylan Beavers. Maybe he's another guy. I mean, he's looked really comfortable for a guy just up to the majors, which is actually very unusual for, especially just from an Orioles lens of these guys coming up. I mean, he's taking walks, his first home run last night. And I do think the Orioles are going to extend Gunnar. The problem is it's not going to happen until his walk year or during free agency. I think Rubenstein, as long as Gunnar proves to be healthy and capable and the analytics say he's going to be good for a long time, I think that's going to be a guy where it's like litmus test for Rubenstein and Elias and company. Franchise player, you do what you can to keep him here, even if it's 10 years, $450 million, whatever. It could be 10 years, $800 million by then with the way things are going. But yeah, I think I'm probably foolish, probably going to be disappointed, but I do think they'll find a way to keep Gunnar here long term. I guess that's kind of a different topic, though.
And with that, that does it for this special episode of Orioles on the Verge. All three of us will be back on the air next week, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more to get Nick's reaction. And if any more news comes of this extension, we'll, of course, react to it then. We'll also cover a lot of news that's come out in Birdland over the last week, as well as the end of the Dominican Summer League season. So you're not going to want to miss that. In the meantime, you can check out our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, YouTube, TikTok, and Blue Sky. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. You can check out the article that Nick wrote that Bob mentioned earlier in the show, and I will have a piece about Basallo's extension sometime this weekend. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member of our community today. You can join to $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus weekly shows from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list. So sign up today to get those perks and a whole lot more. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.